Hello, I'm here with my friend the Snowman for the final battle in the collision series of videos. What I'm going to do in this example is show how we can make more than one snowball go across the screen and hit the snowman at a time. At the moment, if I click, I only get one snowball at a time, and if I click really fast, you can see that snowball is kind of getting written over. It's getting reinitialized, and it's never actually making it all the way to the snowman. So what I want is just a flurry of snowballs going at this snowman. The other thing I want to do in this example is keep score of how many times the snowman gets hit and move the snowman so it's a little bit harder for me to play this game, because at the moment it's not really all that difficult. Okay, so let's get started. Just zoom out here, let's see if this works. Yep, and I'm in my P5JS web editor, and I've done a little bit to the graphics since last time. I won't go into that too much. You can poke around and see how that works yourself if you like. Basically, I've just drawn a background and drawn a little face on the snowman. Okay, so what we need to do in order to be able to have more than one ball on the screen at a time is basically here on line 24 where I check if there's one ball. I need to change that. And then I also need to change here when the mouse is pressed where I'm creating a new ball. I'm just creating a new ball each time. And what that's doing, it's writing over the top of the previous variable. Really, rather than having a single variable for the ball, what I need to have is a list, an array of balls, and I just keep adding to them as the balls are created. So I'll go to the top of this sketch, and I'm going to change ball to balls and make it an empty array. Then in mouse pressed, when I want to create a new ball, instead of saying ball equals new snowball, I'm going to say balls.push new snowball. So what that's doing basically is this part here where it makes this new snowball, that is creating a new snowball. And when I say balls.push, and that should be push with an H, it's pushing it onto the list, onto that array of snowballs. It should be a lowercase h. My caps lock was on. So now I'm actually creating more than one snowball at a time. And here that means rather than just looking at one snowball, I need to go through the list of snowballs. So here I need to say for let ball of balls. So that goes through the list of the balls, and then for each one we will show it, we'll check whether the snowman has been hit by it, and then we'll update its position. So that should be enough for us to make this work. So you can see now I've got more than one snowball on the screen at a time. And this really is the reason why you would use a class. You can imagine if you wanted to have 10 snowballs on the screen at a time and you didn't have a class, you would have to keep track somehow of the X and Y position of each of those, maybe through their own variables, and your code will very quickly become unmanageable. But by creating the Snowball class, all of that information that describes what a single snowball does is all wrapped up in one place in this class. And that lets us take all of that information and then just put it as a single object into an array. And that's what's happening here when I push the new snowball onto the list, onto the array of balls. So that's as much as you have to do. That's all you need to do to have more than one snowball on the screen at a time. Let's now try this other task of keeping track of the score. So I'm going to create a variable at the top, let score, and that's going to start out at 0. And I'm going to draw the score to the screen in the top left. So I'm going to say, sorry, after I draw the sky, just put some comments there. This is actually the icy ground. And I'll fill the background with the sky color. And now I'll draw the current score to the canvas. Whoops. There we go. So I just go text, score, and I'll put it 20 in from the left and let's say 40 down from the top. And I want that to be in black text so it's easy to read. I'll say fill 0. And I'm going to set the text size to be a little bit larger than the default. I'm going to say text size 40. So we start off at 0. Now what I need to do is find a way where I can change that number from 0 to 1 when I hit the snowman. Now you might sort of first think that the place to do that would be here. Like if I put in here score plus equals 1, right? Inside this if statement, that only ever happens if the snowman has been hit by a ball. So in there we can increase the score. But watch what happens when I run the sketch with that. So I'll hit the snowman and see it counts up, not just one time but 11 times or 13 times, you know. So, and the reason for that is if I were to, let me put the frame rate much lower. I'll set the frame rate to 5. If we do that, we'll be able to see these snowballs going across the screen one frame at a time. And you can see, like, when we do that update, it moves 5 pixels each time. And what that means is there's actually a number of frames as it's moving across the screen where it's hitting the snowman. 11 frames. It takes 11 frames for the snowball to get past the snowman. So what we really need to do is only count each snowball once and only once. So what I'm going to do is in my Snowball class, I'm going to add a property to the snowball called hasHit. Because each snowball can only hit the snowman once, right? And that's going to start off as false. So when I first throw a snowball at the snowman, it hasn't hit it yet. It travels across the screen, and as soon as it hits the snowman, that hasHit variable is going to change from false to true. So it starts as false, and in the sketch, I'm going to say down here, when that ball hits the snowman, I'm going to say ball.hasHit equals true. But I'll do that after I update the score. I'll do it at the end of this if statement, so that the first time through, when that ball first hits the snowman, in the first part of this if statement up here on line 39, hasHit on the ball is still going to be false. So I can say if ball.hasHit, and it's maybe a little confusing here because hasHit and isHit. I'll just leave it as it is now, but if the ball has hit, and this is a property, not a function, only on that first time through will we increase the score. Let's try, oh, and I'll just set the frame rate back to what it should be. Let's do it again. Now that did not work. Ball.hasHit equals true. Now the problem here, you might notice that before it was doing 11 frames, now it's doing 10. That's because the first time through, I've got the wrong if statement here. I should be checking if the ball has not hit. So let's actually call this has not hit. So that ball has not hit anything. And I'll go back to the ball and I'm going to make that true to start with. I'm going to swap it round, right? So when you first throw a ball, it has not hit anything. That is true until it hits something, and then it's false. So I'm going to start out true, And then in the sketch.js, I'm going to set it to, and this should be has not hit equals false. So this should only count it the first time round. I kind of had my logic the wrong way around there. And now this one, ball.hasNotHit. Save that. Oops. Control save. Snow is hit. Score plus equals 1. So I've got it. Something's wrong here. Something is wrong. This dot has hit. That's what's wrong. Can you see the problem? I changed my mind about what the thing should be called, but I forgot to change what it was here. I changed it from has hit to has not hit, and forgot to update the name of the property. Has not hit. I like to leave these little bugs in the example video so you can sort of see the process of thinking through what could be going wrong. Like at that time, I knew that I hadn't really changed anything too drastic about the logic, and it was working before, so looking carefully at the names, that was the way to solve that one. Okay, so now each ball is only hitting once, and it seems to be able to handle multiple balls. Let's do the last thing that I promised, and that is to make the snowman move up and down. So to do anything where like I want to change the position of the snowman, what I would do on any class is I like the pattern of having a show function and an update function. The show function displays the object on the screen, and the update function updates its movement from one frame to the next. So let's add an update function. Update. And what I'm going to do is actually just have, I'm just going to have the snowman kind of going up and down on the screen. So I have to kind of aim my snowballs and get the timing right in order to hit it. So in order to do that, I'm going to have a this.y offset, and that's going to start at 0. And I'm going to say this.y offset equals, and I wonder if you can think about what would be the function we would use if we wanted to have something going up and down on the screen in a kind of a smooth motion, right? Did you see the lecture on the sine function, randomness, and noise? The sine function would be a good option for this. So I'm going to say sine frame count, and I probably need to divide it by something, but let's divide it by 10 maybe. That will give us a number between -1 and 1, so we need to map it onto the range that we want. And ideally what I want here is for that to go from this.y offset equals map this.y offset, so which goes from -1 to 1, and I want to map it to from 0, which will be kind of this ground position. So I'll probably want to move down a little bit. That's going to be positive y, and I want to move up quite a bit. That's going to be negative y. So I want it to go from, let's say, -200, just as a guess, to positive 100. That might be too much, but let's see. And once I've calculated that offset, I then need to use it when I show the snowman. So in here, I can just say this dot translate. Just translate this dot y. So I won't translate anywhere in the x position, but I'll translate up and down by that y offset. This dot y offset. And it's important to note that I've put all of the drawing that's done in the snowman in between a push and a pop. So this translate is not going to mess up any of my other drawing. If I didn't have the push and the pop and I was doing this translate, then other elements of my sketch would probably get drawn in the wrong place. So I've made that update function. I actually need to call it from sketch.js. in order to move the snowman. So usually what you do is just here, just before I show the snowman, I should update the snowman. So snowy.update. And it probably also makes sense to, well, no, I'll leave it like that. Yeah, I could probably also, it would be worth updating the snowman before I go ahead and check whether any of the balls have collided with it. So I'll do it like that. I'll update the snowman, move all of the balls, check whether any of them have hit the snowman, and finally show the snowman. So you can see there it's kind of bouncing up and down. Now there's a problem here. You can see it is actually thinking that it's hit the snowman, and that's because when I do the hit test, the collision test on the snowman.js in this is hit, I'm not taking account here of the y offset. So I need to say ball.y and this.y plus y offset, and I'll store that as a variable. I say let y pos equals this.y plus this.y offset, and I'll use that variable instead of this.y. So y pos for y position. And if you need to review how this collision detection works again, just look at the earlier video in this series. That should not be a plus. Okay. Yeah, so that time, I want to slow down the snowman a little bit here. It's a little bit too fast. So to slow down a sine wave, you just divide the part that's inside the brackets, right? So here, it's not hitting the snowman anymore. Now, one thing you could do is you might want to make your game harder to play over time. So a way to do that would be to gradually change this number here. So if you gradually decrease that number, the game is going to get harder and harder to play. So let's say let speed or bounce speed, and I'll just relate that to how far through the game we are. So I could just use the frame count, right? So I can say frame count, and I want to map that from so I want to map the current frame count, map frame count, which goes from 0 up to something very big like 10,000. It's going to go further than that, but that won't matter in this case. And I'm going to map that from 100 down to 10. And then I can also constrain it. So I can also say bounce speed equals constrain. That will make sure that it's in the range 100 to 10. And then I'll divide by that bounce speed. So we start off slow, and as this sketch progresses, it should get faster and faster. Feels so good to hit that snowman. All right, that's about it. What I've shown here is having multiple snowballs, keeping score and making sure that we only count each snowball hitting the snowman once, and moving the snowman. And gradually, the snowman's going to get faster and faster.